Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a My 2 Cent Nintendo/gaming video for this week, for the week of July 26th to August 1st. And where I take a look at some of the stories that caught my attention and give you my thoughts and my opinion. And we got 5 to cover on this one, including a partnership that several companies are having with the publisher Private Division, the same one that produced one of my favorite games last year, The Outer Worlds, which is also on the Nintendo Switch, which I don't think it's as bad as many people make it out to be, but it may not be the version for everyone, to be exact. We also have this report, or shall we not say report, but recent videos have been popping up over the possibility of a feature that might be in, it's basically what many believe would be the next Switch, whether it's called Switch Pro or Switch 2, and I want to give my thoughts on that one. We also want to talk about this Giga Leak that has really put out some stuff about Nintendo that not everyone was aware of, including that it seems to be, though, that Luigi was originally supposed to be in Super Mario 64, but there are some people who are concerned about the ramification of this big, or what it's often being referred to as the Giga Leak and all. We also want to talk about a certain Kickstarter project that is made up by former members of, I think, the developers of the Sudoku. I apologize if I'm not saying the name correctly, that has recently started this Kickstarter project, and I want to talk about that. And I also want to talk about a glitch that has recently appeared in the game Paper Mario: The Origami King. Plus, I want to give early impressions on what my thoughts about the game is so far. But before we get started, I do want to do what I like to do, a quick rundown, which is the quick My 2 Cent parts. Stories that somewhat caught my attention, but I'm not really going to go into huge details of. The first one we want to talk about is that an interview was made by Video Game Chronicles. If you want to read any of the stuff I'm going to talk about, links will be in the description. And it talked about how there are certain restrictions on certain characters they could put into, say, the Paper Mario games and all. I mean, I read it. I'm kind of mixed on this, though. I mean, yes, it's Nintendo. Their policy whatsoever. Some people may agree with this restriction, some people may not, so everyone's going to have a different view on it, though. We also learned, at least according from Google Stadia, that 3 new games are going to be coming to Google Stadia, though. Those are Sniper Elite 4, Strange Brigade, and Super Hot Control Delete. I played a little bit of Super Hot on the Nintendo Switch, and it's kind of interesting. It's sort of like a mixture between a first-person shooter and a puzzle in a certain way. It's a unique but very interesting idea. I'm curious if this one will make its way over to the Switch, but in the meantime, it's coming to Google Stadia. The other 2 that I'm more interested in is Sniper Elite 4 and Strange Brigade. Sniper Elite 4 was a fun game on the PS4. It basically was... it takes the Sniper Elite formula, but push it more towards somewhat of a more open world kind of approach, unlike, say, Sniper Elite 3 was, or the Zombie Army games, to be exact. But to see it come to Google Stadia is definitely one I'll keep an eye out, though. Hopefully, like Zombie Army 4, it runs at a good 60 frames per second. Strange Brigade, I never played it or anything like that, but I will say, based on the trailer that it showed of it, I'm definitely getting a Zombie Army vibe to it to a certain degree, and that's one I probably will keep an eye on, and I might get for the Google Stadia, to be exact. So those are certainly 3 games that Stadia announced that they're going to be bringing over to the Google Stadia. We also learned from the Hollywood Reporter that apparently a animated version of Splinter Cell is in development, and it's going to be coming to Netflix. Which is certainly nice, considering that we have the recent Castlevania, which is really good. Trying to finish up on season 2. We know that the Dragon Dogma is coming, and now Splinter Cell, which is on one hand nice, but I'm pretty sure a lot of Splinter Cell fans would rather see an actual Tom Clancy Splinter Cell, but given the direction Ubisoft's been going lately, it doesn't seem like that's happening anytime soon. What we have read is that supposedly one of the writers for the John Wick movies is basically helping out on this one, so that should make it kind of interesting, to be exact. And last but not least, we learned that there is basically a scam going on in regards of Cyberpunk 2077. Supposedly, the scam is that basically that you could basically get a beta or a free beta of the upcoming release of Cyberpunk 2077, but it looks like the developer CD Projekt Red has responded to that, and on Twitter, on their official Twitter's on their Twitter page, it reads that, quote, if you recently received an email claiming to be granted you beta access to Cyberpunk 2077, it's not from us. Unfortunately, there has been more of these being sent out over the past few weeks. When we contact you via email, it always comes from at cdprojectred.com address. So those who are reading claims that basically Cyberpunk 2077, that you're getting a beta to it, it's pretty much a scam, so it's best to not touch it. And if there are some reports coming out claiming that in order to, although I cannot 100% confirm this, claiming it basically to get this you have to enter in your social security number, which if that's true, don't do that, okay? That should be sending red flags right out of the gate. So don't if you're getting something like that, don't touch it, don't anything like that. And considering that CD Projekt Red has come out and said that this is a scam themselves, it's probably best you do not touch it at all. So if you get something that says a free beta of Cyberpunk 2077, it's probably best not to even open it or even touch it at all. Okay, now that we are done with the My 2 Cent part, why don't we get started with our first story, and this one has to do with Paper Mario, the Origami King. Now, as some of you are aware, recently Nintendo just released the newest entry in the Paper Mario series, titled Paper Mario, the Origami King. A series that has sort of existed since, the original Paper Mario back on the Nintendo 64, which kind of was born out of, what Super Mario RPG Legends of the Seven Stars. Now, I've played a bit of Paper Mario, the Origami King, and I will say my early impressions on the game so far has been pretty good and all that stuff. I will say the battle system takes a little getting used to, and I'm still kind of mixed with it and all that stuff, but nothing that has turned me away from playing the game. Plus, I love the whole visuals to it. It has, the arts and crafts kind of visuals to it, and how the enemies are designed, origamis and so forth. So, I will say my impressions on Paper Mario the Origami King so far has been pretty good. However, it seems as though not everything about the game is 100% perfect, as there are now reports that there is a bug in the game, literally a bug that can literally put you in a position in which the game will basically let you lose any progress you make in it, though, meaning you may have to be forced to start over from the beginning, though. In an article from Screen Rant, it reads that, quote, this new bug is potentially devastating issue in the game should players run into it. A Nintendo Unity video reported details of the bug. The glitch can happen in Shanghai Spa, if I'm saying the name correctly. Normally, after receiving the 4 stamps from the hot spring, the reception toad will give a VIP card to the Spring of Rainbows in order to progress with the story. If the player leaves after entering the passageway to the springs and goes to talk to reception toad again, the dialogue will proceed as if the player never attained the VIP card. The VIP card was already used when presented in the Toad Garden entrance to the Spring of Rainbow, and that same toad will ask for the VIP card should they try to enter again. Checking the stamp won't help either, leaving the players with a soft lock save, which there is no way to get the VIP card and progress within the story, though. Fortunately, this glitch is easy to avoid with the proper knowledge. Simply keep going through the Spring of Rainbow without leaving the area, and the story will continue without affecting the save file. Still, it's important to be aware of this glitch, as it's incredibly easy to make a simple mistake such as that without realizing it. Currently, no patches are announced to those who have countered this bug. However, as of recently, though, Nintendo has made a statement in regards of this bug or this glitch in the game. And according to a statement from Nintendo, they have said, quote, quote, excuse me, "We are aware of reports about issues affecting some players in Paper Mario: The Origami King. We are working to resolve these issues and plan to address them in a software update. We apologize for any inconvenience." So, on one hand, I will say I applaud Nintendo for at least acknowledging that this exists and apologizing and working on it. But on the other hand, at the same time, that does seem like a big oversight. And the fact that people are now learning about this, though, yeah, not exactly a great thing. Combined with the fact that you only have one save file. Really, Nintendo? One save file for a RPG like Paper Mario: The Origami King? Really, Nintendo? Yeah, that's not really good. I mean, if what Screen Rant is saying is true, good that there is a way to go around the problem, but still, this is a kind of a big oversight for Nintendo, especially with the launch of Paper Mario: The Origami King. Hopefully, this can be resolved soon, and hopefully Nintendo will put out a patch that will fix this problem, though. Although how widespread it is remains to be seen, as outside of Game Explain, I haven't heard anyone else running into this problem, although we'll have to wait to see how widespread it is. So overall, it sucks that this bug and glitches in Paper Mario Origami King. Great that Nintendo respond to it and are addressing the problem, but at the same time, it does make you kind of wonder why didn't anyone spot this before they put the game out on shelves for people to buy or to download from the Nintendo eShop. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2. And this one has to do with a Kickstarter that recently that came out from the former developers of, I think, Sudoku or something. It's basically a game called Eiyuden Chronicles, though, and they made interesting statements in regards of a version for the Nintendo system. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right, excuse me, and we'll be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at a Kickstarter that recently was put up by the former developers of, I believe, former developers who developed the game Suikoden. Suikoden. Again, I apologize if I'm not saying the name correctly or anything like that. Now, before I begin talking about this, I do want to give full disclosure right out of the gate. I do want to say that I did back this Kickstarter project, though, and I want to say that any opinion I have about this and all is based on my opinion and my opinion alone. I'm not being paid, sponsored, or endorsed by anyone from either the developers or Kickstarter itself. Also, if for some reason you're interested in the Kickstarter project I just backed or anything like that, I'll have a link down in the description down below, and you could check it out yourself. If it's something that interests you, great. If it's not, that's fine. I mean, that is your call. You could choose to back it, you could choose not to, and in either way, that is basically your decision on that one. So with that disclosure out of the way, we'll get started talking about basically what this game's called, Eiyuden Chronicles, Eiyuden. Now, supposedly this game is being developed by a studio known as Rabbit and Bear Studios. Basically, it's made up of former developers who worked on the Solow series with Konami, which, let's be honest, we all know the direction Konami has been going lately, and they are pretty much a former shell of themselves. Let's just be honest about that, though. So, and they recently announced this game, which, based on some of the gameplay footage that they've shown so far, I'm definitely getting basically what is a Octopath Traveler vibe to it, though. So, and recently they announced that they are planning to bring this game over to multiple systems, though. But the one part that kind of caught some people's attention, that basically states that they are planning to bring this to Nintendo's next system. In several articles, including this one from Nintendo Life, which they recently updated it though, it reads that, quote, and the game Eiyuden Chronicles, again, I apologize, I'm not saying the name correctly, has already passed its console stretch goals, but sadly, it doesn't seem like the game is Switch-bound as we originally assumed. The Kickstarter page now lists Nintendo's next-gen console as a target platform and not Switch. When we reported on this campaign initially, we were told that Sony and Nintendo consoles were definitely in the mix. We just naively assumed the team meant Switch and not Switch.to. According to a statement on this, though, here's what it had to say. Here's what they said in their Kickstarter page, though. Quote, in keeping with our theme of honesty, the reality is that with this game coming out in 2 to 3 years, it's impossible to know what the current video game landscape will be. It would be an idea to have this game available for current gen models and next gen models, but right now it's impossible to say what those hardware requirements will be and what costs will be associated with porting those platforms. For this campaign, the launch time will most likely put us right in the middle of a console transition period, meaning that some people will own a next generation console and some will not. This is less than ideal when trying to run a Kickstarter campaign that you want to cater to the maximum number of people. We need to determine a single quality baseline for the game. Currently, we are offering Eiyuden on Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Nintendo's next generation console. The elephant in the room is that while nobody knows what Nintendo's plans for when this game is released, it's just about every major Japanese game crowdfunding campaign when a lower spec hardware has been listed on the campaign. It has invariably been too expensive, oftentimes requiring downgrading text, massive amount of codes, rewrites, effectively meaning building 2 games. For anyone that has backed one of these campaigns, you obviously know the outcome. These platforms usually get canceled or dropped from the campaign. So again, in keeping with 100% transparency for what is a incredibly difficult problem, if the console stretch goal is clear, we will create a version of the game for Nintendo's hardware. Hopefully there will be something anchored to a Switch 2, allowing for similar quality and gameplay experience across all platforms. If no such console is announced by the time we need to create a new console version branch, we will go through the major challenges of the affordable mentioned text change and code rewrites, or refund any backers who pledge to the platform if there's absolutely no solution. Nintendo Life concludes with, quote, given that Nintendo hasn't begun talking about what system will replace the Switch, which is only 3.5 years into its life cycle, the assumption is that the game will come to a future Nintendo console seems like a stretch, but Eiyuden Chronicles won't be finished for at least another 2 years. The situation is similar to that of fellow crowdfunding successor Bloodstained, which raised its funds way back in 2015 and was supposed to come to the Wii U, but ended up being a Switch release. So I'm kind of mixed on this one to a certain degree. On one hand, though, I applaud the fact that they're trying to be open and honest about it, which I think that's good, although I can understand why some people might be hesitant to back this, given the history that Kickstarter has with a lot of projects. We've seen what happened with Mighty No. 9 and The Wonderful 101. Full disclosure, I did back that one too, and while that one wasn't as bad as Mighty No. 9, some of the ways that Platinum approached that was kind of controversial and all that stuff, including how some folks in the UK felt they were duped and that were not told about some extra fees and all that stuff. So on one hand, I do applaud them to some degree that they're being transparent, and it is possible that by the time this game comes out in 2 years, supposedly they're aiming, it could be 2022, which is true. It is possible there could be a successor to the Nintendo Switch, which I'll talk to in another part of this video. At the same time, and maybe I'm just overreacting on this and all, I can't help but feel it's kind of an excuse of basically they're not going to bring it to the Nintendo Switch at all and all that stuff. And just to be clear, we've seen games make their way to the Nintendo Switch, though, some that are graphically demanding, though. Again, it may not be the version for everyone. A lot of people like to point to the Outer Worlds as a good example, although I kind of disagree with that. And like I said before, I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people make it out to be. But if you look at games like Doom, Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, and Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, it shows a lot of those games, despite being the graphically demanding games, that they were able to bring those games over to the Nintendo Switch. Again, is it the version for everyone? Probably not, but the fact that they were still able to bring those games over, and they still managed to play very well, is still very impressive. And the fact that if this report is true, that it's running on Unity and the Switch runs on Unity as Switch supports Unity, something about this just seems a bit odd. I just can't help but feel it comes off as some sort of excuse. Not to mention, we've seen port houses that have handled ports of graphically demanding games have done a good job with it, though. I mean, is it possible that maybe it can't run on the Nintendo Switch? Is it possible they may have to wait until a successor or the next generation system from Nintendo? That's a possibility, but at the same time, it could give the impression that this comes off as an excuse. So, overall, I would say I'm glad this game has reached its crowdfunding goal. It seems that there are people who are interested in it, and it still continues to earn a lot of money. But the way that they responded about the Nintendo version, or anyway about a Switch version, though, it just seems, I'm just mixed with it. Great that they're kind of being transparent about it, but at the same time, I feel their response of why they're not bringing it to the Nintendo Switch kind of comes off as coming up with a excuse. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to get to part 3, and this one has to do with, well, it turns out to be what's often referred to as the Giga Leak, and apparently a lot of information about stuff from Nintendo has come out, though, and some of it's fascinating, but some of it might be worrisome of what Nintendo might be doing to stop these kind of leaks going forward. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, this has to do with basically a huge leak that has come out from Nintendo, henceforth being called the Giga Leak. Basically what this is that a treasure trove of information has come out that has revealed a lot of games and stuff that had been in development or were considered prototypes at the time that came out. Some of the information that has come out, though, has been basically ranging from Luigi being in Super Mario 64. I've heard stories about this. Supposedly the claim is there was originally supposed to be some sort of multiplayer mode in that game, but they couldn't get it in. Ranging from a canceled Pokemon MMO that supposedly was worked on, to a canceled, possibly a remake of Zelda 2 and Zelda 3, to be exact, to basically even, early prototypes of what Yoshi looked like and so forth. But the information has also came out containing stuff such as basically reports are claiming that it also contains emails and information between Nintendo and a lot of folks and some of the employees and so forth, though. And I will say some of this information is both fascinating and an interesting part of video game and Nintendo history, but there are some concerns already, and some people are worried about the ramification of what may emerge from this. Several articles have pointed this out. According to The Verge, they are pointing out basically about this whole leak and all that stuff. Basically, part of the article reads, quote, "From a historical and preservist perspective, the leak is an incredible find. It's a rare look into the process and discarded ideas of one of the most influenced and secret secretive companies in video games, which is true. Nintendo has a history of being very secret and keeping things to their chest. Sometimes that works in their favor, sometimes that could kind of backfire on them at the same time. Anyway, but those preservation digging through the data, that excitement is tainted by a moral dilemma. The origins of the code leak are still largely unknown, but it is likely to be obtained illegally. That presents a permanent question. Does the source of this leak tarnish all that historians can learn from it? According to, continuing on, it puts a bad taste in my mouth a bit about the leak, to be sure, but perhaps my curiosity about the data is overriding my moral compass somewhat in this case, because I can't say I'm unhappy to see this data, said an archivist who goes by the handle Mr. Talida. The volume of new knowledge and understanding to this leak had brought it at times overwhelming. Some of it has to do with suppose one comes from a person who worked on Star Fox 2, and their comment they posted on Facebook is, WTF, I haven't seen this tool I made for Star Fox 2 for almost 30 years. I wrote in early C++ to teach myself the language more than anyone else. Where the hell have hackers got all this absurd data from? It includes that quote, so what's the big deal? It includes with more of it though. So what's the big deal? While a skinny Yoshi may not seem that important, when you put it all together, the leak is an unprecedented look into video game history. Archivists are still going through the catch, but so far they only uncover not only completely unknown games, but also a new detail of how some of the most influential Nintendo titles were created. Some of those details have since been inserted into builds of games. You can see what an unused beach area in Ocarina of Time would have looked like, or get a glimpse at an enemy that didn't make it into Super Mario 64. This person likened the art history using X-ray image technique to see the layer underneath a Leonardo da Vinci painting. Only in this case, we're able to see the steps designed by folks like Shigeru Miyamoto and Takahashi Tentsu, who took when creating some of the most defining works. In more particular terms, leaks can give us important history and chronological context that we lack from just the final release product, though. Every commanded out block of code, every early draft of a sprite sheet, every build with less than perfect controls and abandoned game mechanics, they give us all incredible values, insight into how these games form and why. In some cases, we can even learn important details about who works on each aspect of the game, knowledge which is often lost in time. Leaks aren't entirely new territories. In the past, source codes or screenshots for canceled games have been unearthed, sometimes from now defunct game studios and publishers who won't or can't fight to secure their intellectual property. But the Nintendo GigaLeak is noticeable both for its scale and the high-profile nature of its content. To have a full, unfiltered source code to a semi-classic like Super Mario Kart, or to have an early sprite work on The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, or have multiple early builds of Yoshi Island, or to have a 3D model created by Yoshikana Kazuma, again I apologize I'm not saying the name correctly, from the earliest Nintendo 64 technology tests, the scope of what has been leaked here exceeded all expectation and precedent, and fulfilled many of the wildest fantasies of game history enthusiasts, though. Unfortunately, the leak also had some other things as well. It points out the leak also includes eternal emails, some with identifying information raising privacy concerns. This, coupled with the possibility of unsculptured origins of the context, makes for a moral complex situations. It represents the Sony picture hack of 2014, which revealed all kinds of scandalous eternal details that were obtained illegally. Fans clearly want to learn more about Nintendo games and how they were made, and the countless GigaLeaks tweets can attach to that, but not everyone is happy about it. To say this makes us feel uncomfortable and it is an understatement, says Brian, different Brian, not me, who runs a Mega Man fan site, Rocket Man Corner, and has been sharing details from the leak. And yet, there's a certain allure here, though. You can't help but look. You know it's wrong, but there it is, Luigi in Super Mario 64. There could also be more practical implications on how Nintendo operates moving forward. The company does occasionally celebrate its history, like when it's released the canceled Star Fox 2 on the SNES Classic and on Switch Online. But it's also a company that has fiercely protected its intellectual property, frequently shutting down infringe fan projects, though, or YouTube videos. This leak could potentially lead to the company tightening up even more. Real talk, this Nintendo leak is bad on so many levels. Tweet Aulx Studio's head at Digital Eclipse, a developer focusing on authentic re-release of classic games. It hurts them, it hurts fans, and it turns the topic of preservation into a topic of security and tightens the grip on intellectual property regardless of its historical or educational value to history. It also points out Nintendo has declined the comment at this time. So I have to say, I do kind of agree this is kind of mixed in a certain way. On one hand, it's very fascinating to see a lot of this stuff. I mean, what the process went through for a lot of these games before basically before we got to the final versions, what it looked like before. I mean, seeing Yoshi, how he had evolved, is also fascinating to learning how Luigi was in Super Mario 64. So on one hand, a lot of this stuff is sort of fascinated, but at the same time, it does raise some concerns of how this information was gotten. And if the reports are true that this information was gotten illegally, though, it's very concerning that you're going to see Nintendo with their lawyers really going out to stopping these leaks from coming out, though. And Nintendo has a history of being very protective of their IPs. Sometimes I think they go maybe a little bit overboard, but there are times when they could be in the right in certain situations, though. But I have a feeling that I would not be surprised if I hear Nintendo has got their lawyers to shut down either a person's YouTube page for leaking this information, or a Twitter account, or anything like that. It wouldn't surprise me, and I've been reading this as well, that they might tighten what information comes out going forward in terms of certain prototypes or leaks and all that stuff. So there's concerns that there are going to be some serious ramification, which is unfortunate because some of this information is kind of interesting, and it does, and like I said before, it kind of gives you an idea of what went through the process when developing a lot of these games. So overall, the Giga Leak is both fascinating and concerning. It's fascinating to see a lot of these games that we loved, to see what process it went through during development to cancel ideas that never made it through. But at the same time, it's kind of concerning because of how this information was given, and given Nintendo's history of being very, very protective of their IPs and all that stuff. Again, like I said, sometimes they go a little overboard with it, but sometimes they're in the right. It wouldn't surprise me if we hear their lawyers get involved in all this, and I wouldn't be surprised if a YouTube page is shut down because of this, though, over a leak. If someone puts information like that to a Twitter page is shut down, though, it wouldn't shock me at all. So I'm very mixed on how about this whole Giga Leak in general. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 4. And this one I want to do is a response to what recently came out by a YouTuber by the name of Drake81. And this has to do with what possibly, though this isn't 100% confirmed, what we could see in supposedly a next generation Switch or Switch.to or whatever Nintendo's going to refer to their next system. So we'll take a quick break and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our 4th part of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at a interesting story has started to come out in regards of what Nintendo's next system might be, or whether it's called a Switch 2, Switch Pro, or something completely different. Now, there's no denying the fact that the Nintendo Switch is doing very well for Nintendo in general, though. Coming off the disaster that was the Wii U, which is unfortunate, though. But there were a lot of reasons why that system didn't do well. The Switch certainly has done very well for Nintendo, though. So now we've been hearing discussions about the possibility of what a next generation Switch or Switch 2 and all that stuff, especially with the upcoming release of the PlayStation 5 and basically the Xbox Series X, though. Now, as some of you are probably aware, Nintendo has a partnership with NVIDIA, and barring any major changes or anything like that, it's supposedly the partnership will last about 2 decades, though. And so forth, and excuse me, and the partnership would last like about 2 decades, though. And while NVIDIA has partnered up with Nintendo and all, they've also developed, you're probably aware, they also develop graphic cards for those who like to game on PC and all that stuff. And recently, NVIDIA is working on a new feature for graphics and all that stuff called DIS 2.0. In their blog post, though, basically what it is, quote, artificial intelligence is revolutionizing gaming, from in-game physics and animation, simultaneously simulation to real-time rendering, and AI assistant broadcasting feature. With deep learning super sample (DLSS), NVIDIA set out to redefine real-time rendering through AI-based super resolutions, rendering fewer pixels and then using AI to construct sharp, higher resolution image. With our latest 2.0 version of DLSS, we're making big advantages towards this vision. Powered by dedicated AI processors on GeForce RTX GPU called Tensor Core, DLSS 2.0 is a new and improved deep learning neural network that boosts frame rate while generating beautiful, crisp game images. It gives gamer the performance headroom to maximize ray tracing setting and increase output resolution. There's a whole feature about it, though, and all that stuff. I'll have a link in the description, though. But what caught some people's attention, including YouTuber Drake 81, though, is a recent, he's known to look up linking pages and all that stuff, of a hiring for this kind of feature in supposedly a Tegra set or something like that. In an article from WCCF Tech, the article reads that, quote, next Nintendo Switch may feature DLSS 2.0 support, job ad suggested, though. The successor of the popular Nintendo Switch console could be coming with NVIDIA's DLSS 2.0 support, judging from a recent job ad. According to this new ad, on LinkedIn to be exact, NVIDIA is looking for a senior edited EMBEDDED software engineer for the Tegra Solution Engineer team to work on next-generation graphics and AI technology for gaming console and AI edge devices. This new engineer will work on a solution to use artificial intelligence in graphics technology like NVIDIA's DLSS 2.0. While the job ad by itself is no indication that a new Nintendo Switch will feature DLSS 2.0 support, it would make a lot of sense for the console to support it or any other image reconstruction technologies, as it will make the console able to target higher resolutions than the GPU would be capable while keeping its costs low, something that will be in line with Nintendo's current approach. Earlier this year, Digital Foundry also ran some tests to see how DLSS AI upscaling will benefit the current Nintendo Switch games, and the results were great. So DLSS 2.0 support for the next Nintendo console wouldn't be all that far-fetched. With the Nintendo Switch still going strong on the market worldwide, it's probably too soon to talk about its successor, the possibility are fascinating, and will be very interesting to see what Nvidia and Nintendo comes up with to keep up with the next generation from Sony and Microsoft. So this would be kind of interesting to see this kind of feature in a, like in a Nintendo Switch or Switch 2 or Nintendo next console and all that stuff. Given, will this appear in it? Will Nintendo use this feature in their next system and all that stuff? It remains to be seen. It remains to be seen though, and given the current situation with the Nintendo Switch as of right now, it doesn't sound like Nintendo is in a hurry, at least yet at this time, given how successful the Switch is at this moment. That being said, I wouldn't completely rule out this feature that could be used in a successor to the Nintendo Switch. I mean, it is possible that, given the partnership, like I mentioned before, that Nintendo has with Nvidia, it is possible this kind of feature, this DLSS 2.0, could make its way in a future, maybe an actual revised Nintendo Switch, or it could be used for something like an actual Switch 2 or Switch Pro, or actually a brand new console, to be exact, though. So it's sort of fascinating at the same time, but we'll have to wait and see if this feature will make its way over to Nintendo's next system or so forth. So overall, it's a very interesting feature Nvidia is working on. Whether this will make it into the Nintendo Switch or Switch 2 or Switch Pro or whatever Nintendo's going to call their next system, that remains to be seen. It may not have to do with anything with Nintendo at all, or it could actually happen. So we'll have to wait and see. But like I said, overall, it's an interesting feature that Nvidia is working on. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 5. And this one has to do with Private Division. And supposedly they are going to be signing a deal with some small publishers, small developers, and they're going to be publishing some of their games. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our 5th and final part of our My 2 Cent video. And this one we're going to be talking about Private Division. I'm sure most of you have heard of that. That's a company that is owned by Take-Two Interactive. I've mentioned them before, especially when they published last year's The Outer Worlds, which I consider my #1 game on the PS4 and so forth. Not to mention the game, as I mentioned before, has come to the Nintendo Switch. Well, it seems as though Private Division is actually working on bringing some more games over, or shall I say publishing more games, and some of these are coming from indie developers, including one that worked on the Xbox exclusive Ori and the Blind Forest and the Wasp, if I'm saying the name correctly though. One of those titles actually made their way over to the Nintendo Switch. In an article from Game Industry Buzz, it reads that, quote, "Today, Take-Two has announced that its Private Division publishing label has inked a deal with Moon Studio, League of Geeks, and Roll7 to publish a new title for each outfit. Moon Studio is known for both Ori and the Blind Forest, and Ori and the Will of the Wasp will be working on a new action RPG through the partnership, while Armelo, ARMELO creator League of Geek is focusing on a new game and IP, and Aulx Studio Roll7 is working on a new Flow State game. All 3 titles are currently in early development and do not have a release date, with Take-Two expecting the first to launch in fiscal 2022 at the earliest. Private Division is Take-Two Interactive's indie-focused publishing label that has recently put its name on titles such as The Outer Worlds, Ancestors, The Humankind Odyssey, and Disintegration, DISINTEGRATION. Apologize, I'm not saying the name correctly. It also recently took over development of Kibera Space Program 2 from Star Theory, moving the project to a newly established internal studio called Intercept Games. Star Theory reportedly shuttered shortly after. One of the games, though, that we know about is the one from Moon Studio. There's a little bit more information, and according to Nintendo enthusiasts, it seems as though then we might have we have more information about it. According to what we've learned, though, it basically the game supposedly that Moon Studio is working on is a action RPG. Previous job listings asked for familiarities with Zelda, Dark Soul, and Diablo. With Private Division publishing this game, this should mean that the game is fully multi-platform. They haven't said anything. While they haven't said anything if the game's multi-platform or not, it might be a good sign that it is. So it's actually kind of interesting to see Private Division doing this, and I think it's nice that they are working with some of these smaller studios to make their games become a reality, though. The one from Moon Studio is really the one that caught my attention. The fact that they're aiming for something that is, if I'm saying this correctly, what was it again? Similar to Zelda, Dark Souls, and Diablo. I'm very curious about that. With Zelda with its exploration, Diablo with the action RPG, and Dark Souls known for its brutal difficulty. I'm very curious to see what kind of game they are going to make out of that. As for whether or not this will appear on the Switch or a Nintendo platform or Nintendo's next system to be exact, so far no word yet on what system it will be on, though. But I will say I do think that there's a chance we could see this on either the Switch or a Nintendo platform. Again, nothing is confirmed at this time, though, but I do think that there is a very good chance, especially considering that the Outer Worlds on the Nintendo Switch, regardless of whether you thought that you liked that version or not, when the MPG charts came out, it came in at number 10 as the top best-selling Nintendo Switch game of, I believe it was, of June of 2020. So, I mean, there is a good chance we could see this come to Nintendo's platform, exactly. Whether it's on the Switch or not, or whether it's on Nintendo's next system or not, that remains to be seen. But overall, I would say it is nice to see that Private Division is working with more of these studios, particularly these smaller indie studios, and giving them a chance to make their games shine, to be exact. I think that is very encouraging, and I think that is a really good thing and all. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about this glitch in Paper Mario, the Origami King, though? Have you experienced this glitch yet? Have you not seen this glitch at all? Are you pleased that Nintendo has responded to this? Do you think they deserve criticism for this lack of oversight on this glitch in Paper Mario, the Origami King? What are your thoughts about this Kickstarter called Eiyuden, Eiyuden Chronicles? Is this a game you're willing to back on Kickstarter, or have you been burned by Kickstarter before many times that you are not even going to back this at all, though? What are your thoughts about their comment about bringing it to Nintendo's next system? Do you think they have a point that the Switch would be very hard to handle this kind of game? Or do you feel like this comes off as them coming up with an excuse on why they are not bringing it to the Nintendo Switch? What are your thoughts about this Giga Leak that of a lot of information coming from Nintendo in terms of a lot of the games they have developed and how some of the early development designs like Luigi and Super Mario 64 or early versions of Yoshi, though? Do you find this information fascinating? Or do you find it worried that because of the way this information was given, that there is a good chance Nintendo is going to clamp down on a lot of the leakers and all that stuff? And do you think this could lead to some serious ramifications? What are your thoughts about this DLSS 2.0 that NVIDIA is working on? Do you think this feature is neat that what NVIDIA is working on? And do you think it's possible we could see this in, say, a future Nintendo Switch, whether it's a Switch revision, a Switch or Switch 2 or Switch Pro, or whatever Nintendo is going to name their next system. And what are your thoughts about Private Division and working with several of these smaller studios to publish some of their games, including this new one from Moon Studio, the developers of Ori and the Blind Forest? Do you think this is very encouraging, though? Are you pleased that the Private Division is doing that? Do you want to see them do more of this, publish some of these smaller games, to be exact? Do you like what I said in this video? Do you not like what I said? Do you agree or disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you like this video, then I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description down below. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!